This happened a while back, but with Halloween approaching, it popped back into my mind and I thought I would share it here. I was an average 23-year-old getting ready for bed. I turn off the light, get all nice and cozy, and then it starts knocking. It was constant, with maybe 1 second between each knock. In my mind, I was thinking it was probably a bug. I turn on the light and go look for it to let it out the window. However, I didn't find what I thought was a bug, and knocking had stopped as well. After some time, I give up, turn off the light and go back to bed. The knocking returns again in the same pattern. Constant knocking with a second between each knock. At that point, I knew I needed to deal with this bug, as it will probably be doing this all night, and I wouldn't be able to get a decent night of sleep. I turn the light on and get out of bed, and once again, the knocking immediately stops. This time, I decided that I will do a full search of my room until I find the source of the knocking. What do I find? Absolutely nothing. With nothing else left for me to do, I go back to bed. The second I turn the light off, the knocking starts again. I'm sitting in the dark, listening where the sound was coming from. I couldn't quite figure it out, but the closet I could guess was a table next to the wall across from my bed. As I turn on the light, the knocking stops. I didn't want to get up and go look for it again without any success, so I turn the light off to pinpoint the direction of the sound a bit more clearly. As I go and reach for the light, my hand barely touching the light switch, the knocking stops. Thing is, I didn't turn the light off just yet. My hand was barely touching the switch. So without turning the light, I moved my hand away, and as I did that, the knocking returned. It was at that point that I knew this was not just a bug. I wanted to confirm that whatever it was reacting to me turning on the light. So, I started slowly reaching towards the light. As I did that, the knocks were becoming slower and slower, as if it knew I was about to turn it on. Then, without turning on the light, I started to pull my hand slowly away from the switch, and the knocks became faster and faster until they reached their regular pattern. I was baffled. I did this a few times. I would reach for the light switch really fast, the knocks would stop. Then pull my hand away slowly, with the knocks slowly getting faster and faster. Every single time, without exception, the knocks were behaving intelligently, depending on how fast or slow I would reach for the switch. The more I tested it, the more real it got. I was sure that whatever it was clever and observant enough to know what I was doing. What's weird is that I wasn't afraid at all. I only got a bit freaked out by the whole situation, as this wasn't supposed to happen, and it was definitely not normal. It started to sink in that I'm engaging in this really strange game with something that I don't understand. I'm messing around with something very foreign to me. I've had enough of this. If I had just gone to bed, the knocking would probably persist, so I tried testing it out with the light on my phone. I figured out that the knocking would significantly quieten down if I turned the phone flashlight on. I moved my phone a bit away from my head so that the light wouldn't bother me, but still kept it close enough to me where I was illuminated. I left the flashlight on the whole night. I could still hear some knocking from the darkest corner of my room, but they were definitely more tolerable. One knock, then about 5 seconds of silence, then another knock. About 10 seconds of silence, then another knock. Eventually, the knocks either stopped or I fell asleep. A bit of context. I started work as a cleaner in a hospital a month ago. For the last 2 weeks, I've been working in a department that's for cleaning and sanitizing theatre equipment. Another little bit of context, the department was formerly a theatre over 20 years ago. There were a few days last week that I had to work on my own. Normally 2 people work in this department because there are 2 sections. A couple creepy things happened to me. The first night, I heard an elderly man say my name as clear as day in my ear around 11:30 at night. I was 100% alone because I was just finished cleaning the whole department, and there was absolutely no one other than myself there. I nearly shit myself. I came to terms with the fact that a lot of people have unfortunately passed in this department. The next night, things were fine. Nothing out of the blue happened. Sunday, however, I was polishing some steel when a handprint slowly started to appear. This happened 3 or 4 times. Each time, I would polish the handprint away. After the 5th time it happened, I got pissed off. I only had 4 hours to clean a huge department, 2 bathrooms, 2 sluice rooms, and a kitchen as well as polish and shine a shit ton of steel. What I'm saying is, I went to work early to get my work done, and I didn't get it all finished because of how much there was to do. So I said, do you fucking realise how disrespectful that is? I don't have enough time or patience to clean this whole place to the standard that's expected. And here you are screwing up the work I just done. Now, if you don't mind, the next time you do that, I'm out. And you can clean this place yourself. Got it? All sounds stopped. And not 10 seconds later, I heard an awful lot of typing. I got super embarrassed thinking someone heard me giving out to something that might not be there. I checked the department only to find that I was the only one there. I went back to the room I was in only to see the keys on the keyboard getting pressed left, right and centre. I just stood there like, fuck no. I finished polishing the steel and mopped the floor and got the fuck out of that department. I almost died when I got out of the department and ran into a care assistant who was getting some tools that were needed for labour. She asked me if I was okay, so I told her that the department was creepy. She ended up telling me that the department was used as a temporary morgue for a few days, about a month or 2 before I started. I can't describe how happy I was when I saw that it was time for me to clock out. I found out my friend passed away on August 1st, 2017. At the time, we'd been out of touch for a few years as we'd both got married. I stayed in our hometown. He'd moved out to Washington, D.C. However, in our high school and college days, we'd been very close and spent a ton of time together, playing sports and going to concerts. He'd gone off to college, and I had visited him a handful of times. On one of those visits, I brought my new girlfriend along. She's now my wife. Naturally, we hadn't stayed in touch as we got older, but always chatted whenever our paths crossed. So I was upset to learn he'd been killed in a car accident overseas. A day after I'd heard of his passing, my favourite band, the Foo Fighters, announced a secret show at a tiny club in Chicago. The following day, my wife and I managed to get 2 tickets. We felt lucky, as the capacity was only around 1,000. The hard part was, not long after we'd scored the tickets, it was announced that my friend's funeral was going to be the same day. Obviously, I couldn't be in 2 places at once. I struggled to make the right decision. I asked my mom for her opinion, and she felt that maybe getting the tickets was kind of a sign to go, as we'd gone to so many in the past and had so many great memories. So, my wife and I opted for the concert. It was a 5-hour drive to Chicago, and we spent the majority of our time reminiscing, but also feeling guilty. That night, as the Foo Fighters took to the stage, Dave Grohl slowly talked while plucking his guitar. As he started, I wondered what they'd open with. To our amazement, they played our favourite song, Aurora. It's a beautiful song about the cosmos and the unknown. It had also been a handful of years since the band played it, and after doing some research, that they have been the only time they opened with it. My wife immediately burst into tears. I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. All my guilt washed away. It was like a head nod from above that it was okay. Truly unexplainable, but maybe not paranormal. Our daughter was born in 2019. Her middle name is Aurora. This happened at least 3 or 4 years ago. When I was a kid, I was spending my weekends at my grandma's place because I could do whatever I wanted. And whatever I wanted was to play games all night on some shitty laptop while Skyping with my friends. Okay, nothing weird here. Every night, I was getting this feeling of being watched, and often felt like there was someone walking behind me. Like I could almost hear the steps, but when I looked back, no one was there, and my grandma was either sleeping or in another room. It happened every time I was there, but I brushed it off, thinking that I was tired and probably just imagining things. Fast forward a few years of this. I changed high school and I lived with my grandma for 2 years because she lived close to it. The next thing I'm about to write caused me to sleep with the lights turned on for a month or so, and I still get the chills from that night. It was some intense nights of playing League of Legends. It was around 6 a.m. It was very dark outside and I had no lights on. I was sitting in my bed looking at memes, and I got that sudden feeling of being watched, and with the corner of my eye, I saw that something was different. Near the corner of the room, I saw a shadow on the wall, a figure so dark that the darkness around it seemed like dark grey. I stared at it while thinking that I'm tired and should go back to sleep. While thinking this, the shadow figure started moving. It was tall but short at the same time, walking fast but slow. It walked to the opposite side of the room and disappeared. The next day, my grandma was very worried, scared, and didn't tell me why at first. After I questioned her, she told me that she saw the same thing in the living room. Another thing that happened there was a bookshelf falling off randomly without any earthquake or instability. The thing sat there unmoved for probably 20 years. Before the shadow thing, I invited some friends over and they kept saying that they are seeing shadows, but I brushed it off. Happily, I don't have to see that place again, due to my grandma passing a few years ago. This is a strange experience I had at the round age of 18. I was sleeping on the couch in my mum's living room when it happened. I was initially dreaming as I entered a large room with a pool to my left and a wall to my right. I continued to walk along the wall and saw a hallway entrance on my right. As I approached the hallway, the pool room transitioned into the living room where I was sleeping, and the hallway ended up being the front entry for my mom's house. It was early morning and the sun was already illuminating the house. I found myself lying awake on the couch. I continued to focus on the entryway. There's a closet over there that was left open from the night before. As I stared, I suddenly saw a creature looking at me from the top edge of the door. It had what looks like burnt skin and didn't appear to be much taller than a toddler. It seemed playful and curious. It kept peeking out from behind the door at various heights, as if it was messing with me. I felt extremely curious and decided to go over to check it out. It was at that point that I realized I was paralyzed. I didn't feel any level of fear after the initial shock, only extreme curiosity. I was actually so curious that I somehow gained the ability to move in a limited fashion. I slowly moved myself off the couch to my knees as I continued to stare at this thing. All the way up to the point, it was giggling and jumping around the door in a playful way. The moment I got to my knees and began to stand up, the creature froze in place while staring directly at me and began to show an expression of complete terror and surprise. Shortly after this, it disappeared behind the door and I never saw it again. The moment this happened, I snapped back into my body on the couch and I opened my eyes to find myself still laying there, as if I'd just woken up. Everything in the room was exactly as I saw it a few moments ago. The closet door was open, the sunlight was illuminating the room. Even the small details of the living room were exactly as they were. I immediately jumped up and ran to the closet door to see if it was still there. And of course, it was gone. I don't really know what to make of this. I've never seen that thing again in over 10 years. To add context, I had moved in with my roommate 8 months prior to his grandfather's death. He lived with his grandma, grandpa, and aunt. They had told me stories of their paranormal past before my roommate's grandfather's passing. They had told me stories of a little girl, a lost soul who likes to sing. My roommate's other grandmother also died there. My roommate has the aura of a curse as well. His family once lived in a very demonic home in Florida, so a pretty paranormal past. However, I myself have felt a different connection to the paranormal. I've always thought that I have the ability to see the otherworldly side. Medical practitioners have said it's schizophrenia, but this isn't how Luke they would describe. I see people, humans who lost completely confused. Sometimes they look as if they have consciousness, like they can really be real on another plane. It's up to your morals to believe me, but this is my truth. My mentor in life dies. My roommate's grandfather had died in my bathroom one evening on a rainy Monday. It felt like all three eyes, third eye I possess, opened and blinked in perfect unison. I could feel every soul in the house, the little girl, the grandmother, and the grandfather. Last week, I ordered a pizza for my roommate and I. As I got a notification that the pizza was here, I went to the front door and looked through the peephole. There was no car anywhere in sight, but I noticed something moving through the peephole. It took me a second to adjust my vision, until it hit me. There was a little girl with long, dark brown hair, almost black, but you could tell it wasn't black. She was wearing long-sleeve sweater dress with a white collared shirt underneath, long school socks and black dress shoes. She was twisting side to side, facing a direction where I had previously, the night before, seen a shadow man move across my neighbor's yard. I pulled away from the door and tried to keep my composure. I walked back to my roommate's room and told him everything. He said, "Whoa, my roommate's sister is the only one in the family who's seen the girl, and it's the same girl." She's been known to see the paranormal as well. As I write this, I can feel all souls wandering around the house. They're observing. I have 5 cats who play with the spirits. The cats look at them and feel them too. Something about today made me share this with you. I hope it means something. I moved into the house I'm currently in with my friends about 8 months ago. Initially, I was in the smallest room in the house, but after the girls living in the master bedroom moved out, I agreed to take it at the higher cost of rent. It seemed like a sweet deal. My own bathroom, doors with locks on them, and the second largest room. One roommate has the living room, which is bigger. With how my room is arranged, I can see into my bathroom from my bed if the door is open. About a week passed by, and I'd wake up and look into my bathroom to see someone standing in it. I didn't really think much of it for a while, even though my bathroom would get oddly cold, and if I left the door open at night, I'd see the silhouette. About a month later, I walked in on a discussion between all my roommates about how their tools on a shelf in the garage got thrown off while one, let's call Robert, was smoking in it at night, alone. They then mentioned how things will fly off tables and shelves sometimes. Another roommate, we'll call Matt, smokes in his truck in the driveway and said he heard a girl aggressively whispering his name but couldn't find anyone. The garage always had an off vibe at night, but now it made sense. I tried not to think about it, but the silhouette in the bathroom kept appearing. I started keeping that door shut at all times. Things got progressively worse in my room. Initially, it was only my bathroom, but after I kept the door shut at night, it moved. I began hearing someone outside my sliding glass door on the deck, but no one would be out there. I had a hard time sleeping because I kept feeling eyes on me from the deck. After a couple paychecks, I got blackout curtains, since I didn't have any curtains to begin with. The noises continued. One night, I put together a new fan. Not 5 minutes after I finished, it got thrown into the corner of my room while I was on Xbox Party. I put it back up and got back in bed before I felt a weight shift and saw the outline of someone sitting on my bed on my sheet. At that point, I got scared and went to my girlfriend's, let's call her Amanda, house for the night. The next day, late in the evening, I came home and started gathering laundry from my room. I felt a hand tap my hip 3 times and once again left to Amanda's house for the night. After that, things only got worse. Shadows moving on my walls, thumbs on my closet door, lights and fans in my bathroom turning themselves on. I can see under my bed through the reflection on my TV. When I turn it off, someone would be laying under my bed or sitting at the foot of it. It got to a point where it would look like someone was crawling on all fours around the edge of my bed. Amanda and I tried burning sage and other things she suggested in the room. It would last for a time, but eventually the silhouette would return. Amanda and I eventually broke up about 3 months ago, and it all got worse. I got really depressed, and I think that it understood that and would make more noises and show itself more often. Time passed, and I guess I got used to it, or desensitized to it. It's not like I really had anywhere else to go. It stopped throwing things, turning lights on, and walking on my deck. I thought maybe it didn't care anymore since I had gotten used to ignoring it. For a little while, everything went silent in my room. Almost a month ago, I quit my job due to hostility from co-workers, and as of now, I'm waiting on word from an interview. Since I was home all the time, I caught Robert on a day off and talked to him about it. Robert mentioned that when I was gone and he was home alone, he would hear things from my room, like I was home. What disturbed me was when Robert mentioned he grew up across the driveway from our house and remembered when someone's daughter committed suicide in one of the bathrooms, though he didn't remember which one. It made me wonder, because most of the activity happens in my bathroom in the garage, though there has been a couple one-offs in other places of the house. Now, starting about 3 weeks ago, I would lay down to sleep. I'd get to the point where I'm not awake and can hear everything, but still just on the cusp of sleep before I'd hear a girl's voice. The first few times, I couldn't tell what she was saying. I would just suddenly wake up with my heart racing and see a shadow move. One time in particular, I heard her very clearly say, "You need to tell him," as if someone whispered in my ear. When I opened my eyes, a perfect outline of a woman backed away from the side of my bed. That's the only time I've ever understood what she was saying, and the clearest outline I've ever seen in my life. As of right now, it's not as bad as it used to be. I was told not to feed it or pay any attention to it, but since that never changed anything, I tried to talk to her late one night. What's the worst that could happen at this point? I introduced myself and apologized for all the times I had yelled at her. Almost the same night, the entire vibe changed. She's still in here. She makes noise on my closet door, and my bathroom gets ice cold whenever I go to use it at night. But I don't feel in danger like I used to, though I still wake up with my heart racing whenever she does wake up. 2 nights ago, I was just about to fall asleep, and I faintly felt an arm wrap around me, and the faint feeling of someone trying to cuddle up to me, which, as much as it freaked me out, I fell asleep anyway. Again, I've got nowhere to go. I have to get used to it and just try to make her angry again. Does anyone have any experiences like this? I've dealt with paranormal stuff a lot throughout my life, but I haven't believed quite as much as I do now. I thought I was crazy until she started to harass Robert, Matt, and the other roommates. I haven't asked them all about it recently, but from all I can tell, the house is not as bad as it used to be. When I was a toddler, I would sleep in my mother's bedroom, and I'd frequently wake up to the sight of a man in the wardrobe. The wardrobe was an antique. If the wardrobe was closed, the man would walk through the door, and he'd walk towards me, hold out his hand as though he wanted me to touch him, before walking to the fireplace and disappearing. I used to be terrified of this man. His eye contact was very intense, so I'd hide under the covers or pinch my mum awake. But I remember the final time I saw him. When he reached out his hand, I touched him. The air was ice cold, and I never saw him again. Over time, I've kind of convinced myself children are imaginative. Maybe you were hallucinating, as there are many explanations for why someone might see something. I, however, do not have any mental illnesses. That's all fair and good, but other unexplains have occurred to me personally that I can't explain. Guests and family have had experiences, but I'll stick with myself for now. When I was 14, I had to share the master bedroom with my mum again. We had separate beds. And that's when the knocking began. The wardrobe would regularly knock from the inside. 3 sharp raps, and always when I was alone. The knocks were extremely clear. I may have had an odd response, but I tended to just ignore it and didn't tell anyone. But then it happened to my sister. The wardrobe knocked, and she ran from the room screaming. The knocking actually progressed. It happened at the attic window, different room, when I was with friends. They ran crying. It then happened to my ex-boyfriend's window, a completely different house, and he ended up wrapping rosary beads at his window. With each incident, the knocks are always the same, 3 hard raps, although occasionally the knocks would repeat themselves. I haven't heard the knocking in a few years now, but I'm wondering if any of you have any ideas, and any idea why it would follow me. The knocking could be unrelated to the original sightings as a child, but I thought I should mention it as it was the same wardrobe. My then boyfriend, now husband, inherited the house built in 1950 of his grandparents back in 2018 because his grandfather couldn't take the stairs anymore, which forced them to move out. We moved in shortly after, in May 2019. The first 3 weeks went well. We cleaned the house and made it our home. In summer, things started getting weird. FYI, my boyfriend never believed in ghosts or anything paranormal. I was just hoping that the creepy stories I heard were just stories. But here are a few of our encounters. It started out quite small. Random things like the TV, microwave, or washing machine started acting out. We didn't think much of it due to the fact that they were quite old already, but were still working, so we didn't throw them out. Doors started opening or closing on their own without any door or window open, so the wind was not the culprit. One time, a door which never makes any noise when being closed opened started opening with the loudest and most chilling screech I've ever heard. I closed and opened it to test it out, and it didn't make a sound. One night, my boyfriend and I were in bed. It was around 10 p.m. We were both awake talking about some stuff, when suddenly a loud noise came from across the hallway. It sounded like the big metal ladder we kept in that room the noise came from had fallen over. We got up to check it out, but everything was normal. Nothing shattered, and the ladder was standing perfectly straight, leaning against the wall. One night I was home alone watching TV because my boyfriend had to work late. It was around 10 p.m. Next to the TV was a glass door. Something kept me looking. And every time my eyes landed on the door, I noticed a piece of white fabric in the left corner, as if someone in a long, white, flowy gown ran past the door. This happened multiple times during that night. I told my boyfriend, and he opened the glass door to take a look. As soon as I stepped near that door, I started freezing like it was winter. But it was summer and it was really hot outside. We couldn't find anything that explained what I saw. One time, my boyfriend and I were getting ready for bed. He was already in our bedroom when I was still brushing my teeth. It was almost midnight when I heard a little girl tell a story. I thought that my boyfriend was watching a video, so I brushed it off. When I came into the bedroom, I asked him what he was watching. He looked at me confused and said, that he wasn't watching a video at all. And he thought I was watching a video of my little niece chattering around. It couldn't come from outside. As I said, it was almost midnight, and it was fall, so the nights were getting quite cold. So all of our windows were closed, but it sounded like the girl was standing right next to us. My boyfriend and I were fighting over something, and I told him to leave me alone so I could calm down a little. He went outside to work in the garden, and I stayed in the bedroom when I heard something that sounded like someone was tapping their fingers impatiently on a firm surface. It came from the door frame right outside the bedroom. It startled me a little, and I stared out the hallway. Nothing. Then I heard it again. I got nervous and I grabbed my phone to call my boyfriend. I came back inside to look, but of course, there was nothing. Hello everyone. I, 19 female, lost my brother who was 21 at the time of his passing due to his battle with depression. This was in 2012 when he ended his life. I was only 10 when I was told the news about his passing and had a hard time accepting that he was truly gone. I was removed from school for about a week to plan his funeral and just be with family. My first day back to school, I was walking in the halls all alone as everyone was in class. I had to leave to take a moment to collect myself as I was crying over my brother. Clear as day, I remember hearing my brother call out my name. I could smell his cologne and felt the hair on my body stand straight up. I was spooked at first, as when I turned around, I saw the papers on the wall move as if someone had run past them, and the wind from the running blew them. I never said anything to my family about it, as I didn't want to upset them, until a few years later, I was laying in my bed and I felt the presence of someone in my house. This was normal, as my house is actually haunted. When I looked up at my doorway, I saw my brother standing there just smiling. I remember freezing before I screamed for my dad. He quickly vanished right before my eyes. I never in my life thought I would see my brother again. That night, I remember just staring at my doorway, wondering if he'd come back. Since then, there's been a few encounters, whether it's just smelling his cologne and having the sense of presence in the room, to seeing some of my things like our pictures moved from where they are hung or placed. My bedroom is normally locked when I'm away and no one has a key, so I know that he is the one looking at our pictures. At first, I was so scared and spooked, but now I feel safe and at peace whenever he stops by to see me. He tends to visit me in my dreams as well. Oh, I wish my dreams were real. I'd love to hug him again.